Right. In the last class, we have discussed uh, the inter-process communication and how this communication is takes place in the client server environment. That is also we have discussed, right? So now let us move to the another important concept called threads. A thread is a basic unit of CPU utilization consisting of a program counter, a stack, and a set of registers. These are the three things that every thread will have, right? So a piece of CPU utilization, you can call it as a thread. For every thread, we'll have program counter, a stack, and a set of registers. Okay, so a thread is a sequence, a single sequence stream within a process. For example, suppose if you type something in the Word document, right? While you are typing, one thread will look after your keystrokes. That means whatever you are going to type, and in the background, some other thread will take care of finding the spelling mistakes and grammatical mistakes if is there any. Like that, in the background, some other threads are also working, right? So there you can imagine whatever the piece of job that the CPU get executed, it is called as the thread, right? So every process may have many number of threads. Okay, so threads are dependent, whereas processes are independent. Okay, now uh, in a traditional process has a single thread of control. Suppose if a heavy weighted process is there, for that we'll have only one thread. You can observe this diagram, a single threaded process. Here we have only one thread because it is a heavy weight process. So for that reason we'll have only one thread. So it shows, as I told you, every thread is having registers, program counter, and a stack, right? And this is the information for every process we have: code, data segment, and the files, right? So this is about a single threaded process. If you observe the diagram, the right side diagram, it is a multi-threaded process. Okay, very soon we'll come back to discuss about this particular diagram. First, we'll try to understand what exactly the thread, and then we'll look at about multi-thread, right? So a thread, sometimes known as the lightweight process. This is also one of the important definition of thread. A thread, sometimes known as a lightweight process, since they have some properties of process, right? When you are talking about this single thread, you can observe, you may not find the difference whether it is a process or thread. Of course, there is a lot of difference that exists among these two. Okay, so whatever the properties that the process is having, it is also, if the thread is also having or it accesses the same properties, you can call it as a lightweight process. So sometimes the thread is also be called as the lightweight process, right? So that is about a thread. So basically what you understood from thread is a single piece of code that execute, or a single piece of execution of your work, of your job, of your task by the CPU is called as a thread, right? And then we have two types: single thread and multi-thread. Okay, multi-threading means it is the ability of CPU to execute multiple threads concurrently. You can observe this diagram. Here we'll have multiple threads. You can observe the diagram carefully. Whatever the common part which is shared among all the threads, that is code, data, files. This information is related to the process which can be shared among all these three threads. They share the single address space, shared address space, right? But internally, each and every thread is having its own set of program counter, registers, and the stack. Okay, so that is the reason three times it was repeated in three different places, right? So in the multi-threaded, Multi-threading, CPU will allow you to execute multiple threads concurrently. And frequently it will switch you from one thread to another thread. In such a way, it will help us to increase the responsive nature. Whereas if we a process switching, context switching, which we have discussed previously, if CPU wants to switch from one process to another process, it need to save a lot of data before switching it into the another process. But here it need not. It is frequently switched from one thread to another thread, so that whatever the threads that are completed, it just simply produces the result of the particular thread without waiting for the another one. So in such a way, it is able to produce the responsiveness. Okay, all right. So multi-threading means you'll have your multiple threads that are to be executed concurrently by the CPU. When the multi-threaded process is run on a single CPU, then the CPU switches rapidly from one process to another process. If it is the case of multiprocessor, probably anyway, if we have multiprocessors, your task will be divided into parts, and those parts will be shared among the processors itself. But if you're talking about the single processor, if you have a single processor, what happens in that case? So we need to have the switching mechanism. We need to implement the switching mechanism among the threads, so that will improve the efficiency of our system, right? So since every thread can access every memory address within the process address space, so one thread can read, write, or completely wipe out another thread state. So as I told you, they say memory address space of the process is shared by all the threads, right? Here, the code data, and files. This is the common, you can imagine, this is the address space. That can be accessed by all these threads. So in that case, what happens? Whatever the things that were placed here by this thread one, maybe read or write, or you simply delete it by this second thread, right? Because this is the common area which can be used by these three. So these three may do anything. Either they can read or write, they can write their own data, or they can delete, like whatever the operation that they wanted to perform, they can do it. That is about a multiple thread. When a multi-threading is present, a processor starts with a single thread in it. As we have observed, a process creation, where the init process acts as a parent, right? That's what we have discussed in the previous classes, how a process is created, how the subsequent operations will be converted as child process. So we have observed the process tree, right? Process creation tree. Yes, thread communication. Yes. One thread is able to communicate other. Yes. You are talking about inter-process communication. Like that, is there any communication between the thread? The processes are able to communicate with each other in the similar fashion, whether the threads are able to communicate each other or not. That is your question, right? Okay. Now, here you just carefully observe. Don't be confused. Okay. Once again, let me clear the things. A process. What is a process? A program in execution. You can talk about a C program which contains two user-defined functions along with the main function. You just imagine yourself. We have a C program with one main function and two user-defined functions. Okay, so now if you try to execute it, it will become a process, right? So now, coming to the thread is, when we try to execute the process, whatever the main function that you have started, it acts as a one thread. So during the execution of it, we need to make a call to the one of the user-defined functions. That will become another thread, right? After that, after executing this thread, again the control will come back to the calling environment. After that, wherever the second function call has appeared, again what happens? Yes, there it creates another thread. So here what happens is, once the control is allocated to the thread process, the CPU need not wait for its completion, because after completion anyway CPU will get some information regarding the completeness. So meanwhile CPU may busy with, or CPU may allow some other task, or it may be continue with this continues its execution, whatever it may be happen. So in such a way it is able to switch one bit among others, right? Just a minute. Fine. So now, coming to the point, whether a thread is able to communicate with other, a thread is going to be shared with other, whether the data or whatever it may be. So in this sense, the thread is dependent. It depends upon the processor. It depends upon the implementation. Very soon we'll see the thread scheduling also. We'll see the thread scheduling, how the threads are going to be executed, right? In that, we will elaborately discuss what way the threads are going to be executed in the CPU. Okay, so until then you just clear with the point, like what exactly the process, what exactly the thread. That's it. Hope you are all clear with this, right? What is the process, what is the thread, what is the connection between these two? These 3 points you should clear. Fine. All right, now the thread, uh, okay, so now the thread will be doing these 3 activities by calling the library procedures. One is thread create, thread exit, and thread yield. So thread create means it specifies the name of the procedure for a new thread to run. You can imagine just like creation of the thread. Thread exit means after completion of its execution, it need to be exit from the, it need to be exit. And thread yield, it allows a thread to voluntarily give up the CPU to let another thread. Suppose this is the time the thread 1 is running in by the CPU. So if it yields, that means it allow another user, another thread to run on the CPU by leaving it. That means voluntarily it allow another thread has to run. So that is what we call it as a thread yield. So these are the 3 different libraries that they use. Okay. Now, so multi-threaded applications have multiple threads within a single process, each having their own program counter, stack, and a set of registers. Okay, this is very important point which everybody has to remember is, in the multi-threading environment, what are the things that every thread is having? Registers, program counter, and a stack. Okay, and all the threads are sharing the common code, data segment, and the list of open files. This is the environment in the multi-threaded application. Now let us have a look at about what are the advantages of threads. So there are 4 advantages of there. One is responsiveness. The first one is, as I told you already, when we are executing multiple threads, whatever the thread execution has completed, simply it produces the results. It need not wait for other threads, even though all the threads are belong to the same process. Okay, even the other process or other threads are in blocking state also, it won't wait. Whatever the thread that has completed its execution, simply it exits with the results only, right? In such a way, what happens? Automatically the responsive nature, I mean, the way it answers your queries, it gets increased. Otherwise, if there is no such kind of facility, that means after completion of each thread, it won't produce its result. It has to wait until completion of all other threads. What happens in that case? Once you submit your request, probably you will get 2 days or 3 days of time for getting the output. Okay, so that is in such a way it increases the responsiveness by giving the results of the threads whoever has completed, right? And resource sharing, it is very important, beautiful benefit of using threads. By default, threads are sharing the common code segment, data segment, and other things as which we have discussed in the diagram itself: code segment, data segment, and list of open files, right? So all this data can be shared by the multiple threads. So in such a way, one data can be accessed, or single address space data can be simultaneously accessed by multiple threads. So in such a way, we can maximize the resource, because our one of our fundamental goal of our operating system is it should act as a resource manager. So it will allow the users, they can use the resources, they can share the resources. So here it could be done with the help of by maintaining the common code, data, and other resources, right? And economy. Creating and managing threads is much faster and performing the same task for processes, because you can create in an easiest way. It won't take, it won't much more expensive one. So you can create as simple as possible as the way which we create the processes. And fourth one is scalability. So utilization of multi-processor architectures. Scalability means how effective it is, how many jobs are going to be completed. Okay, so a single threaded process can run only on one CPU, no matter how many may be available. Whereas the execution of multi-threaded application may be split amongst available processors. Okay, so in the single CPU, or if your system consisting of single processor, no issue, because all the threads are need to be executed by a single processor. When we are talking about multi-threading and the multiprocessor environment, where we will have multiple processors, what happens in that case? If we are able to distribute the execution of the threads among the processor, so that the efficiency gets increased, right? So these are the benefits of threads. Now, let us have a look at about multi-threading models. Multi-threading models. Before going to discuss about the multi-threading models, one should understand what are the types of threads. So based on the behavior, we will be classifying the threads into two categories. One is user threads and another one is kernel threads. User threads and another one is kernel threads. User threads are supported, all of you observe this point very carefully. User threads are supported above the kernel without kernel support. Yes? Somebody has unmuted. Any query? Right. So user threads are supported above the kernel without kernel support. These are the threads that the application programmers will put it into their programs. Right? Usually, when we are writing a program, we'll create independent tasks which need not require the kernel support. So such kind of threads are called as user threads. They are running above the kernel, and they don't want to interact with the kernel. They can execute everything with their own. So such kind of threads are called as user level threads. Of course, don't worry, we'll discuss elaborately later after discussing the models. So before going for understanding of the model, one should understand what exactly the two different types of threads that are existing. Okay, then kernel threads. Kernel threads are supported within the kernel of the OS itself. As you know, what is kernel? What is its job? Okay, so kernel threads are supported within the kernel of the OS itself. All the modern operating systems supports kernel level threads, allowing the kernel to perform multiple simultaneous tasks and or to service multiple kernel system calls simultaneously. So what we understood from this is kernel level threads are while executing the job at a kernel level. Suppose say for example, if you made any system call could be executed with it could be converted into kernel because the system call can be executed with the help of kernel only. Okay, while executing that system call, probably if your process is divided into threads, such kind of threads, what we are called as kernel level threads, because they could be executed by the kernel itself. Uh, okay, so such kind of threads are kernel threads. So here we have two different types of threads, user threads and kernel threads. Sometimes user threads may need the may want to get the services of kernel threads also. If it is able to execute with its own, then fine. But other than that, they need to be mapped to the kernel threads. For example, in your program, if you write a system called like fork, which is for creation of the another process or some other system call. What happens in that case? That need to be get executed by the kernel itself. So there should be a mapping. There should exist a mapping process. How do we map the user threads into kernel threads? So for that, we are supposed to use the mapping model, multi-threading model. Okay. So in specific implementation, the user threads must be mapped to kernel threads by using any one of the model. One is many to one model. That means many user models may be mapped to the one kernel model, right? So in this, many user level threads are mapped into single thread. So the thread management is handled by the thread library in user space, which is very efficient. However, if a blocking system call is made, then the entire process blocks. So in this case, what is the problem is, if a particular blocking system call is called by a particular thread, what happens in that case is the entire process is blocked. Even though some other threads are even having the possibility of execution are executed by the CPU, the whole process is going to be stopped. That is blocked. So that is one of the problems with it. Because a single kernel thread can operate only on single CPU, and many-to-one model does not allow individual process to be split across multiple CPUs. Right? So green threads for Solaris and GNU portable threads implement these are the areas where we have implemented this many-to-one model in the past. But in the few systems continues today with the same mechanism. So in the many-to-one model, what we have observed is all the user threads are going to be mapped to the single kernel thread, right? If any one of the user thread has made a call to the system call like block, the entire process is going to be blocked. Even though there is a provision of executing, other threads can be continue its execution. And next one is the one-to-one model. In the one-to-one model creates a separate kernel thread to handle each user thread. In the previous case, all the threads are mapped to one kernel thread, but here it is not like that. Each thread is mapped to each and every kernel thread, right? In the one-to-one model overcomes the problem listed above. What is the problem which we have discussed previously? If any one of the thread made a call to the system called block, all other threads are going to be blocked because the entire process is going to be blocked. So that is the reason there is no provision for executing other threads, even though they have the provision of execution. But here it is not case. Suppose in this case, this particular thread made a call to the system block. What happens in that case? This particular process is this particular thread is going to be blocked because this is only the thread which is going to be mapped to this particular kernel. Remaining all are mapped to the other kernels. So they need not wait. They need not start until this block has been deleted. So in such a way, it overcomes the problem. But okay, anyway, it overcomes the problem of the previous one, but it is very complicated. It puts a lot of overhead on the CPU, especially in the case of when we have multiple CPUs. In that case, it becomes very difficult for the implementation. Okay, that is about one-to-one model. And Linux and Windows 95 to XP implements the one-to-one model for threads. So, you are all aware of the XP, Windows XP. So, in the Windows XP, people have used this one-to-one model of mapping. And last one is many-to-many model. So, in the many-to-many model, many of the user threads are going to be mapped to the many of the kernel threads. Right? So, it just combines the features of many-to-one and as well as one-to-one. Many-to-one, many processes to single process. It may happen, or one-to-one. One thread may be mapped to. So it combines both the benefits of many-to-one and one-to-one. So users have no restriction on the number of threads created. So blocking kernel system calls do not block the entire process, because that is the beauty of this is the beauty of one-to-one communication. This is the beauty of first point is the beauty of many-to-one process. So processes can be split across multiple processes. Processes can be split across the multiple processes. It is not possible in the many-to-one environment. Okay. So like that, your other process may be mapped to the kernel by using any one of these three different models. So being a developer of the OS, designer of the OS, you need to think when you are handling user threads and kernel level threads, what way you are going to be execute all these. Okay, so that is about the models. Now let us have a look at about the thread libraries. So thread libraries provides thread libraries means they provides programmers with an API for creating and managing the threads. For creating and managing the threads. So the thread libraries may be implemented either in user space or in kernel space. So in the olden days, people are using these API functions implemented slowly within the user space with no kernel support. But nowadays, people have implemented using both in user space and as well as kernel space. As you know, what happens when we are creating at user level and kernel level, right? So whenever if you want to execute it with the hardware components of the system, you need to be converted into kernel level, right? So now basically in today's generation, people are using three different types of threads. One is POSIX, or simply you can call it as P threads. POSIX thread or P thread. It may be provided as either user level or the kernel level library as an extension to the POSIX standard, Portable Standard Input Output System. POSIX stands for Portable Standard Input Output System. So as per the standards of it, either it may be used as user level or the kernel level library. Whereas Win32 threads provides all of them are kernel level library. So in our Windows system, we have Win32 threads. because the majority of our people are using Windows as an operating system. So it uses the Win32 threads. And coming to the Java threads, so if you are the Java programmer, since it is running, your Java program is running on the JVM, Java Virtual Machine. Why we are calling it as Java as a platform independent programming language means you may develop a Java program in Windows operating system. Later, you can run the same program, the same code on Linux environment system without modifying it. Because that is the reason why we need to, why Java is supposed to use both interpreter and compiler. Java, I think Java has completed for you, right? I don't know. You have completed, or you studied Java or not. Okay. Anyway, with the help of the Java virtual machine, your Java code is converted it into bytecode. That is system understandable format code. So, always wherever you have developed your program, that need to be converted into JVM understandable format. So that is the reason if you develop a program in Windows environment where your JVM is present, so that could be executed because your program is converted to JVM understandable format. In turn, JVM is converted to system and operating system understandable format. If you run the same program in the Linux environment, what happens in that case? Your program is converted to, anyway, it was converted to JVM understandable format. So it is the responsibility of the corresponding JVM which is running on the Linux environment to convert your Java program into system understandable format. So that is the reason, irrespective of the operating system where you have developed your program, Java program can run in any other platform provided JVM is available. Right? So based upon this, whatever the OS and the hardware the JVM is running, either the P threads or Windows 32 threads are depending on system. Any one of these, we can run it on the environment where we'll have JVM. So these are the three thread libraries which we'll have up to now. So usually the P threads are either maybe provided as either user level or the kernel level libraries, whereas Win32 threads are kernel level library on Windows systems. And the third one is the Java threads, right? They will run on the JVM. Okay, so that is about threads. What we have covered so far is what is thread, what are the advantages of threading, what do you mean by multi-threading, and what are the various models that are used for mapping user threads to the multi-threading models. Simply they are called as multi-threading models. How your user level threads are going to be mapped to the kernel level threads in the specific applications. Right? These things we have covered, and thread libraries. Okay. Now let us have a look at about what are the problems that exist with the threads. So far we have discussed the advantages and the facilities that are provided by threads. Now let us have a look at about the problems that are created while using threading. So the first one is the fork and execute system calls. Now, if one thread is in program calls fork system call is used for creation of sub-process, right, or sub-thread. So, does the new process, here the question is, does the new process duplicate all the threads, or is the new process single thread? So whenever if we are using a fork, automatically a child process is created. Now with the thread, within the thread, if we make a call to the fork for creation of another process, in that case, whether what is the behavior of the fork system call? Whenever if you made a call using fork, whatever the parent process PCB process control block data structure is present, the contents of the PCB of parent is duplicated as a child, except the process ID, because the newly created child process is assigned with the process ID. Except that process ID, everything is copied from the parent to the child. That is what happening in the fork system called previously. That is what we have studied. Now, if one thread in a program calls the fork, does the same thing has happened whatever we have discussed previously or not? That is, it is the completely system dependent. That you need to be decide yourself as a designer of the OS whether you should allow or whether you should continue the same process or you want to change it. That depends upon your way of implementation, right? And next one is, if the thread invokes execute system call, in that case, the program specified in the parameter to execute will replace the entire process. Once again, have a look at it into the question. When we made or when a thread invokes the execute system call, the program specified in the parameter to execute will replace the entire process. Yes, it replaces it by including all the threads which are related to that particular process. Okay. Now, second point is thread cancellation. What way the thread is going to be cancelled? Whether it is there any provision of cancelling their own, or with a system itself it is going to be cancelled or not, as we have discussed in the process creation and process termination. Every process can terminate with its own, or due to variety of reasons the process may be cancelled by the system. Probably if the resources are not available, or whatever the task that was assigned to the child is no longer needed, like that, there are a variety of reasons the system has cancelled its execution. Similarly, here also, what about a thread cancellation? If the task terminating a thread before it has completed, will it possible such kind of facilities available? Or a thread that is to be cancelled is often referred to as target thread, right? So a task can be, a thread can be terminated. Once again, if it is the task of terminating a thread before it has completed, it is one of the responsibility of the thread to terminate after completion of the task. Okay, and because as I told you very beginning, responsive nature, whatever the task that has completed its execution, they will produce the result. So without terminating it, it won't produce the result. Okay, so in order to give the response, it should be terminated once its execution has completed. Now, a thread has to be cancelled is often referred to as target thread, right? Whatever the next thread is going to be cancelled. That is what we are call it as. What is the name of the thread is target thread. So cancellation of target thread may occur in two different ways. One is asynchronous cancellation or deferred cancellation. So asynchronous cancellation means whatever the thread that we have identified as target thread, we need to be cancel it immediately. That kind of cancellation, forcefully if you terminate it, such kind of cancellation is called as asynchronous cancellation. Otherwise, it is called as deferred cancellation. That means it sets a flag without directly deleting the target flag. What it does is it sets a flag that indicating the thread should be cancelled itself when it is convenient, whatever the convenient time that it will have. So based on that flag data, it is going to be terminated with its own. Okay, periodically it verifies the flag bit. Based on that, whenever it is convenient for that particular thread, based on the flag data, it is going to be terminated. So in such a way, based on the convenient means, once the execution of it has completed, anyway it is going to be forcefully terminated, right? So in that case, what happens? Suppose if I am at the middle of the execution of the particular task, so I can wait for a period of time. After that, I can set the flag bit and then I can terminate it myself. In such a way, a thread can be terminated. So such kind of cancellation is called as deferred cancellation. Otherwise, once whatever the time that the particular thread has identified to be cancelled very soon will be called as target thread. The target thread will be cancelled automatically, immediately once it was identified. Such kind of cancellation is called as asynchronous cancellation. This is the thread cancellation issue. Now, signal handling. This is an important point. Signal handling. So, in the signal, a signal is used in the NX to notify a process that a particular event has occurred. Right? Uh, Even in the inter-process communication also, we have used this signaling system, right? So just you can imagine, or you just like an interruption, an interrupter. We are busy with some task, executing some task. If some other event has to be started at that moment, what happens in that case? Somebody has interrupt you to stop this execution and try to start the new event to be started, right? So similar here also, a signal is used in Unix system to notify a process that a particular event has occurred. So a signal may be received either synchronously or asynchronously, depending upon the source of the source of and the reason for the event being signaled. So either it may be a synchronous or the asynchronous one. So it depends upon the situation, right? So what is that situation is? So every signal may be handled by a default signal handler or a user-defined signal handler. So anyway, we have a default signal handler. Instead of that, if you want some different functionality, you can define your own. So such kind of signal handlers are called as user-defined signal handlers. Okay. Now, when we are talking about a multi-threaded process receives a signal to what thread? So in that case, multiple threads are executing. In that case, the signal has occurred. So who is going to handle this particular signal? We'll have four major options. One is deliver the signal to the thread to which the signal applies. Among all these threads, to whom it was applicable, directly deliver to that thread. That is one option. Another option is deliver to signal to every thread in the process. Without passing it to the specific one, we can pass it to the all the threads which are running. A third option is deliver signal to certain threads in the process. Okay, a few, not single. Suppose four threads are executing. Among four, if we supply it to the two only, okay, that is one option. And assign a specific thread to receive all signals in the process. We will leave one thread which is specific to receive all the signals. These are the four options which we have. What is the first one? We will assign whatever the signal to whom it was meant. That means whatever the signal which for which the whatever the thread for which the signal has applied, directly deliver to that, or deliver to the whole, or deliver to the part of the threads, or assign a dedicated thread which can receive all the signals. These are the four options that can handle in the multi-threaded environment. Okay, so in such a way, the signals can be handled in the threads. So these are some of the issues which we are supposed to be considered when we are going to design a new operating system using threads. Okay, so that is about introduction to the threads. We'll see the remaining things in the next class. Nothing else. Only one more one more issue which we have to be discussed, that is the thread specific data and peculiar activations. And then we'll discuss the difference between process. Right now, I'll stop this session now. If any one of you are having